the TV version of being a lawyer is very different, right? You get the crime committed in the first 3 minutes, and it solves, and the trial's over in the last 3 minutes, in an hour, or maybe sometimes 2 hours. No, that doesn't happen that way. There's a lot of tedious, very unglamorous work. There's some glamorous stuff, but there's a lot of unglamorous work.
Welcome to another installment of the Perspective Podcast. My name is Devin. This is my co-host Mitch Harley, and today we have on Bruce Engel. He is a criminal defense lawyer, and I know it's a little bit outside of who we typically talk to in the world of business, but we thought it would be especially valuable to kind of pry into his world to see, the inner workings of it and how he has come to find success in his industry. Bruce, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning, or it's afternoon now, just afternoon. But I think you guys are out of Edmonton, are you not?
Yeah, Calgary and Cochrane. So it is early morning for us. Bruce, I'd love to kind of get a little bit of a backstory on you. What's the Coles notes of how you became a lawyer? Was this something that you always kind of had an interest in, or did you fall into it and accidentally discover a passion for it, or how did you get here?
All right, good question. I can probably spend 5 hours on that, but you asked for the cold notes version, so I'll keep it short and simple. I was raised in a typical Jewish family, and I was told that I was going to be a doctor from the time I was 5 years old. I had an older cousin who was a doctor. No other family members really, but that was where I was gearing. I took the sciences in high school. I did quite well in high school. I had a roller coaster academic career. I did horrifically in elementary school. Did pretty good in high school, and then in CEGEP, which is kind of like junior college. I don't know if you guys know what that is. I grew up in Montreal, although I live in Ottawa now, but I grew up in Montreal, Quebec, and didn't do too well in Vanier CEGEP, which is pre-college. And then I was at a crossroads, and my dad said, "What do you want to do? You got to do something you like. You can't study sciences and flunk out to please other people." So I ended up taking an English literature degree at Concordia University in Montreal. And I heard everybody saying they want to go to law school. I just kept my mouth shut and said, let's see how the marks go. Did very well in university. Got into law school out west. And 31 years into my law career, here I am.
Wow. It's crazy that you started with the education thing. Me and Mitch have our own kind of opinion about the state of public education and the paths that we all kind of took, very similar in that, you're kind of going through all the stuff, getting exposed to all the different ideas and things that you could possibly be. And, just none of it really fits. And in an ever-changing and evolving world, who would have known that we would have ended up in the world of podcasting, especially considering it never existed. Did you, when you first got out of college then, after kind of pursuing the law degree, did you start your own firm, or did you get hired on to somewhere else before you kind of went down that path?
Well, before we get there, I should tell you, in university, I wanted to be a journalist, wanted to be a radio broadcaster. So the life and job of podcasting was not very far away from me. I had a radio show at the local university radio station. And I used to joke that I had 0 listeners. I would try and give away tickets. No one would call in. And so the world of podcasting is not very far away from my heart and what I wanted to do. But I remember one of my academic advisors, when I indicated I wanted to be a radio journalist, or actually I wanted to be a radio DJ, a disc jockey working for the radio stations. And my academic advisor said, "Bruce, your marks are too good. Why don't you go to law school?" And I said, "Well, yeah, kind of everybody's going to law school." She says, "Write your LSATs and see how you do." And I wrote my LSATs. My LSATs were very average, or a little bit above average, but my marks are really good. And I got in, and here we are. So I've done radio. I actually have a podcast of my own, which I'm trying to get off the ground with a friend of mine. And my wife and I did a Facebook show, which is kind of a podcast show, I guess, during the beginning of COVID, called Brunch with Bruce and Bonnie. It was relegated to Facebook show. It was punk rock. We just put the video on and recorded. No prep, no rehearsal. I had a little bit of background music, and we got some good guests, and we did it. We had a little bit of a local following. So the world of podcasts is not very strange or very foreign or very unpredictable to me. It's something that I've always wanted to do, and I've done, and I probably will do in the future. So I don't think that answered your question, but that's a little bit of information I thought would be relevant for you guys to know.
It's super cool. The radio jockey. So I had family that were radio jockeys out in Manitoba back in the 70s, and I got all his collection of back when vinyl was going on radio, right? But yeah, that's an interesting one. I've always really appreciated that. The reason I actually got invited to do news TV broadcasting, but when I was younger and go through school with that, but it was a very political game, and you start out with nothing, and it's a very tough grind in that world. So it's definitely, you have to have the right mindset to go down that path.
And I was told that I had a face for radio, so I guess that's where I was heading.
Well, this is going on YouTube, so.
Yeah. When you were kind of influenced, I guess I'll say, from the teacher that said, "Hey, why don't you try law?" Did you ever think like, maybe I should pursue this other thing a little bit more seriously? And the reason I asked, let me give you a little bit of background. I'm a musician myself, and music as a career has always been the thing that I wanted to pursue. And ironically enough, there was a lot of transferable skills that I developed in the world of music, making music videos and things like that, and marketing and all that, that really worked well in the world of podcasting and marketing and business growth and development and that sort of thing. And so I'm always kind of caught between these two worlds of like, well, yeah, what about music? You got to go back and focus on that. But, this is where the real money is being made. So I got to nurture that as well. And so I'm always faced with this dichotomy that I think a lot of entrepreneurially spirited people are faced with. How do you navigate that yourself?
Well, it's going back 30 years at the crossroads, right? About what I was going to do. And it was almost like being on autopilot, because I really wasn't sure what I was going to do well, I knew what I wanted to do, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I knew that what I was going to do had really very little to do what I wanted to do, if that makes any sense. So I wanted to be a radio DJ, but the view was there's one rock and roll radio station in Montreal at the time, was Show 'em FM. And what you get, a dozen DJs on rotation. So it's 12 jobs. They're all taken. There's maybe one job every few years that comes up. So I kind of thought it was impractical. And when I became a DJ in university, I thought I was pretty good. I was a pretty good DJ. If you watch my brunch with Bruce and Bonnie, I'm a real ham, a real hack in there. It was a pretty good show. It was pretty funny. But I just was, upper middle class Jewish background. We're not radio DJs. I was told to go to medical school, and then law school was the next option. I mean, the old saying, Jewish family, they have a real smart kid, he becomes a doctor. They have a kid who's not as smart, becomes a lawyer. They have a kid who's really not smart, he becomes an accountant. So there's not really a lot in there for, becoming a DJ, become a musician. I would love, I'm gonna die with two regrets. Regret number one is never learning to play an instrument, and regret number two is not writing my book. I've tried. I don't think it's in me. I just don't have the time. As far as music, I just don't think I have the talent. I've tried. I've got as far as doing the intro to pick three different ones from Pink Floyd. The little intro. I've got the fingers down. It's pretty well. That's all I can do. And then you practice a little bit, and you get away from it. But I've had a very good law career, but I don't really think back too hard on what would have been, what if I would have gone the other route.
Right.
I think back about what ifs if I would go and change my path now, and I'm near in the twilight of my career, thinking about retirement and how much I can go on. But to answer that question, I don't really, and I never really did think, what if I would have gone? I think, what if I would have not moved out of Montreal? Well, life I've been in, like in Montreal, practicing law in Montreal. I think about that more so than what it'd been like had I been a journalist or a radio DJ or anything like that.
So let's dig into the law a little bit, because it really interests me, the different paths and the opinions and everything of lawyers. And so when you start, like, I think this, let's just go from a stereotypical version of somebody outside of the realm. You go in and you join a firm and you're treated like crap, and you do all the dirty work and the heavy lifting, and then you kind of move up, and eventually you start to actually build a career. Is that accurate? Like, is that how the TV version of lawyers actually pans out?
Not really. I'll answer. That's a great question. I took a different path, and the TV version of being a lawyer is very different, right? You get the crime committed in the first 3 minutes, and it's solved, and the trial's over in the last 3 minutes, in an hour, or maybe sometimes 2 hours. No, that doesn't happen that way. There's a lot of tedious, very unglamorous work. There's some glamorous stuff, but there's a lot of unglamorous work. I took a very different approach. I finished up law school out west in Saskatchewan. I went to the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, did my law degree there, knew I was coming back to Ontario. I knew I was not going to stay in Quebec. And I articled at a general firm. And I remember my articles when I was done. I said to my wife, if I have to do real estate law or corporate law, I'm going to do something else. I can't do it. And then my dad said, well, why don't you just do what you want to do and start your own office? And I remember talking to my wife saying, yeah, I'll open my own office out of the house. I get a client a month. I can pretty well cover some expenses, and away I go. It became a client a month. The target then became a client every other day. And things just took off from there. Next thing I know, I rented space, and I probably had the three greatest stressors within 30 days happen. I opened up my law office in a law office. I moved into an apartment, and I had my firstborn son, all within 30 days.
Wow.
That was in late 91, early 92. Talk about stress. So I got through that. My view is I can get through anything else.
How old were you around that era of your life?
I was 29, 30.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I just turned 60. I just turned 60 last week. And so back in 91, I was born in 93, February 7th of 93. So I was like 29, 30, and all that was happening. And if you think too much about things, what's the Nike slogan? Just do it, right? It's the greatest. That's the greatest. Just do it. If you think too much, you don't do stuff, right? If this podcast is over and I start thinking about what I should do, should I go practice piano? Instead of just doing it, you don't do it, because I got other things to do besides practicing piano. And when I started my office, I was told by everybody, don't do it. It's a bad economy. Most businesses, what I was told, like 90% of businesses fail. And if I would have thought about that, I would never have done it. So there's some degree of being naive and being young enough and stupid enough to not listen and to do it. But yeah, just do it. If you got to do something, sometimes don't overthink things.
I think there's a massive lesson there in that, the stats, people use stats to live in fear and to fear other people. And I'm not even going to talk about the stats we've been dealing with over the past few years, but just stats in people's life. Like, how many people get in a car accident in their driving life? Like, probably, like, the stats probably really high, but nobody sits there. Yeah. Nobody sits there outside of the registries when kids are coming in to take their tests and saying, hey, don't do that, because 90% of people get in a car accident. 20% of people, there's fatalities of car accidents. 80% of fatalities end in death. Like, just ridiculous stats that keep people in fear. And if you live that, you would never get a driver's license.
You
It would never fly if they look at stats, like all these stats. So I think that's beautiful that you said, no, I can do this because the stats don't tell the whole picture. The economy is irrelevant to a lawyer. Sorry, like firemen, lawyers, and police don't get affected by the economy. There's always work for them. Maybe less people, but there's always sustainable work. And I think that that's really beautiful. It's not like you went out and bought $1 million lease your first month. It was something it was a calculated expense.
You know what my rent was my first month?
I didn't want to know.
$500.
Oh, I knew it. I knew I didn't want to know. I knew I didn't want to know.
That's wild. It's literally 10 times that now. I don't know, but maybe about Ottawa, but here in Calgary, it's like for any kind of commercial real estate leases, $5,000 or more a month.
My office rent is 20 times that now. And I got four associates and whole staff, but it was just me. My little office. I had a part-time secretary. I had a plug-in phone that I brought from home with an old-fashioned voice recording machine that when someone would call, you'd hear the clicking and all that. But very rudimentary, but those are good times. Like, now it's like a well-oiled machine and it's all slick and all high tech. And it's, I don't think I'm having as much fun as I did back then.
It's interesting how once you kind of solve all the puzzle of it, like to get the business. And this is one of the things that I kind of fear about, the pursuit of goals is that once you kind of reach the finish line, the magic's, how the magic trick is done. And so it's not magical anymore. It's just the thing that keeps churning, right? But for you, in terms of like how you grew your firm and how you scaled things up to a place where like your life, your family, everybody's comfortable, what do you attribute that success to? What was the thing that kind of made that happen? Or was it a culmination of things?
It's a culmination of things. I'm going to tell you something. I don't know if you know much about me, but criminal defense lawyer here in Ottawa for 30 years. I would put myself in the top 2 or 3 right up there as far as criminal defense lawyers go. And as far as success, as far as, financial success, number 1, easy, number 1. And I'm not just saying that, I'm not just blowing my own horn, because I'm going to tell you things that maybe aren't as flattering about myself. Am I the smartest guy in the world? Absolutely not even close. So you got to compensate the lack of, I told you about my academic career. I horribly in elementary school, did pretty good in high school, almost flunked out in CJEP, did okay in university, went out west. I didn't go to Harvard or Yale or any fancy law schools. I tell you, my marks I wasn't at the top of the class. So I had to compensate for the lack of academic brilliance, if I can use that term, with hard work and a little bit of luck. And my brother's a lawyer also. He does the same type of thing in Toronto. He was always very academically gifted, did very well academically, much better than I did. But I'm more street smart. So common sense, street smart goes a long way. Hard work, having, personality and personable skills, being able to relate to people, that's huge, right? I know a lot of very good lawyers, very smart people who just can't convert that into a good law practice because they don't have the other skills that are required, right? Communication skills, personality, and confidence it's half the battle also, right? And that goes through in anything. I mean, you're a musician. Take a look at someone like Mick Jagger, right? He is nowhere near the best singer there is, nowhere near the best looking guy there is, nowhere near the best musician, but this guy has got as much charisma and has had as much success as anybody for extended period of time. And what do you attribute? Mick Jagger's not going to say he's the best singer in the world, not going to say he's the best looking guy in the world, but the whole package, he's right up there, right? Same thing with a guy like Bruce Springsteen. Far from the best guitarist, best singer, maybe the best songwriter, depends what music you like, but those are guys guys like Bruce Springsteen and Mick Jagger and guys who just don't have the obvious gifts and the looks and the attributes up front. They make up for it by hard work and perseverance and a little bit of luck, right? I mean, Mick Jagger teamed up with Keith Richards and the right guys in the band. Bruce Springsteen had the right supporting guys, right time of his music. So it's a little bit of luck, right place, right time, and good old fashioned hard work.
You reminded me of this interview actually with Steven Tyler, and this is really important, I think, for anybody that's listening. In this interview, he was talking about that song, "Sweet Emotion," and there's a minute long buildup in that whole song, and he's explaining how there was one of those clicker things that they gotta like spin that clicker,
and it broke.
It broke in the middle of the recording, and you can almost even hear him like kind of get upset about it, right? And they left it in, and I think that this is really important, just for the sake of just understanding that we all have this perception that these guys that do these things really well, that everything that they do is perfectly planned out and it's exactly as it's meant to be. And really what's happening is it's just chaos. And they're doing their best to control that creative chaos or that chaotic energy in a way where you and I, as listeners now, get to share in that experience. And that, I think, is part of, like, one small part of what makes them great, is that they don't see those imperfections. Like that thing breaking, if that happened in my studio, I know the guy that I was recording with would be like, no, we're going to do it again, cut that take and let's try this again. But they had the wherewithal to know that in that moment that sound was so unique, they'd never be able to replicate that. And they were like, no, we're going to leave it in. We're going to leave it as it is. It's really imperfect.
Yes, like two schools of thought. When I told you about my the show I had with my wife, the Facebook show during COVID, it was punk rock for a number of reasons. We just didn't have the budget and at the time. I just wanted to put the recorder on and let it go.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, punk rock itself, I mean, there's two schools of thought, right? The Sex Pistols didn't have the ability. They're just pressing record and whatever you get. And that album is as good as you're going to get anywhere, right? But guys like Queen and Steely Dan, they're going to record and re-record until it's perfect, right? So there's two schools of thought. You got to make a real slick production and a real slick effort, or you got to just go in very raw and, get what you get. And very often, you're a musician, I'm not, but I've heard very often the best take is sometimes the first take in a song, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of less, because it's an industry, it's a business, right? It's a different product is all it is. And you look at a lot of these guys that have had success in their industry, and going back to the Stones, in one of their recordings, they didn't have enough hands. The drummer was like, I want this sound, but I can't do it with all that. And there was two officers walking by. They called them in and said, hey, can you do this thing for us? And so on that recording, nobody can replicate it with three people, because it's not possible, because in the recording, they had two officers that came by and just volunteered their time to help out in this recording studio. So these are things that are behind the scenes that we don't know. And I think when it comes to personal lives and especially this, well, let's go back to the lawyer thing. Like, people have this perception that lawyers live in $10 million mansions and they're a bunch of crooks and, they take it bad. Like all these stereotypes that come on that field because of a small percentage of gross people that are in every industry. And I think it just gets kind of villainized. Like, have you noticed that? And let's add the fact that you're a criminal defense lawyer. But like, if there's somebody that gets villainized, it's probably you. Like, have you found that?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you something. I don't live in a $10 million house, but I'm, very financially comfortable. I don't complain.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what I do complain about every day is I wake up every day and I got to work. And for a number of reasons, I got people who depend on me. I got people who want me. And the thought of not being wanted, it scares me more than, resting and relaxing, taking it easy. So when the fact that I get a call and I'm being bothered, I always, I think back, well, I remember 2011, I had a very slow summer. And I remember thinking, I will never complain when things are busy, because I remember during the very quiet times. So, to answer your question more directly, look, I can't complain about the type of work I do. I'm not out there under sweltering heat or freezing cold, you know, doing construction work and breaking my arms and having cables snap and almost take my head off. No, I'm not doing that type of work. However, and maybe to my detriment, and maybe this is a bad quality that I will admit, I don't believe anybody has as much stress as I do. And I look at other people and I often make fun of my friends because they take it easy and they relax and they have a soft life and they're able to get out early where I'm stuck late. But I'm stuck late because I want to do it and I have to do it. And I'm not a perfectionist. I just want to get the work done and I want to do good work and I want to succeed at the end of the day. So I want to do it right. And in my job, doing it right is not, you can't work 9 to 5. It just doesn't happen. So as a result of that, I look at others and I say, you guys have it easy. And I really very often don't respect other people who who certainly have it just as hard as I do. The only difference is with criminal law compared to other jobs. And this is not I didn't discover this, but I've been told, and it's very, very appropriate. Take a look at you guys. We're here on a weekend and we've got the video camera going, right? Technology, Zoom, I'm on Zoom, I'm in Ottawa. You got your microphones on, you got your cameras working. Everything that is being done is for this program to succeed, right? You got a good guest who was on time, who's responsive, and I'm not a bad interview. I'm trying to help you make your podcast work, right?
Right.
Okay. Think about a dentist. A dentist, everybody in that room wants to get that tooth. The dentist wants that tooth out. The patient keeps his mouth open, wants that tooth out. The dental assistant helps to get that tooth. There's nobody interfering with the dentist. Take a look at my job. When I'm in the courtroom, I want my client likely to be found not guilty, right? Or to get off, as you guys call it. But what does everybody else in that room want? Everybody wants me to fail. The judge, the judge doesn't give a shit. Well, some of them do. Some of them want to get it right, but they don't want the client to be found not guilty. They want to do it right. What does the police officer want? Police officer wants me to lose. What does the Crown prosecutor want? Crown prosecutor wants me to lose. What does the client want? The client wants me to win, but more often than not, he does things that help me lose. So I'm fighting everybody on my own. I'm a lone warrior there.
Including your own client.
Including my own client. I got to tell, I had something yesterday. I had a meeting with a client who was being accused of assaulting someone in an institution, and we were going to avoid criminal charges. And I told him, when you're going to interview, just keep your mouth shut and just answer the questions. Keep it simple. He just went on. And I remember texting his parents during the interview saying, tell him to be quiet. It was all done by Zoom. I said, tell him to shut up. Tell him to stop talking. Stop him, right? And he just, through no fault of their own, clients often don't help themselves. Some of them do. Some sophisticated ones really do, but those are few and far between. So go back. I don't know how many jobs, aside from maybe pro sports, that you have other people that want you to fail, right? And in pro sports, the other team wants you to lose. And you have a referee, which is kind of like a judge. They just want it done right. But name the other industry that everybody in that courtroom wants me to fail.
And the stakes are a lot higher too, because it's actually like somebody's life on the line, right? The byproduct of you not doing your job well is that person loses a small percentage or a large percentage of their life.
That's right. Amongst other issues, for sure.
Yep. Right. Yeah, that's challenging.
That's definitely a good take. I really appreciate that.
So that's why I am the way I am, right? And when people sometimes see what I go through, I always look at them and say, now you know why I am the way I am.
Mhm.
And I think I'm pretty grounded. I think I'm far from perfect, and I'm a workaholic. I don't have any substance abuse issues. I don't drink a lot. I don't do a lot of dope. I don't really do much. My life is I read, and when I read for pleasure, it's fiction. I read a lot of music biographies. I play hockey 3, 4 times a week. I work out 2, 3 times a week, and I work and I watch TV. I watch Netflix. That's it. That's what I do. That's what I do. But if you want to piss me off, you come to me and, my wife knows not to do this, but someone else comes to me and says, oh, they're very stressed. They have a really tough job. Unless you have a really tough job, don't tell me that, because that's what sets me off.
Yeah. There's a bit of a disparity between the two, I think. You touched on something, and I don't want to glance over it because I think it's really important. You mentioned this need to be needed. And I'm curious because I'm very similar, and I found there are some byproducts of this. How much do you think that's motivated you to develop skills in your life that are, or as a derivative, make you necessary or make you needed by other people? Like, did that push you to work on things so that you could become needed, or did you even really pay attention to that? How did that influence how you kind of took this path?
Yeah, a lot of questions there. Well, I'll tell you, it's a big ego thing, right? Everybody loves when it's being wanted, right? Whether or not it's a client who wants you, whether or not it's your junior lawyer who wants you and asks you questions, whether or not it's another lawyer who calls you and asks you questions. I got a call last night from a good buddy of mine who had an ethical dilemma. It was about 7 o'clock at night. I was at the office trying to get home. I promised my wife I'd be home by around 7. And I took the call because he needed me. It wasn't a particularly interesting area, but he needed me and I'm going to help him out. And that drives me a lot, right? Someone wants you and someone needs you. And, it's kind of a corny thing. Why'd you become a lawyer? I want to help people. I've heard that one. Yeah, I want to help people, but I kind of get a kick out of the work. You kind of get a rush out of, I don't get a rush out of being in court anymore, really. Being in court, I've done it, and I've done it all levels of court. I get a rush still out of the new client who calls me and says, I've heard good things about you and I really need some help. And someone who genuinely needs help and someone who's going to be receptive to that help. There's no bigger rush. There's no bigger rush. I would imagine a bigger rush being on stage and playing a guitar solo to 20,000 people. Yeah, that may be a huge rush. But, when you got that one person sitting in your office and they want you and need you and you can help them, how can you say no? And how can you change gears, right? Hard to change gears and not care and not want to do that. And that's irrespective of the monetary rewards, right? Forget about the fees that I'll get from that. I command large fees and I get a lot of money, but I sometimes, not often, and you'll hear that, oh yeah, Bruce Engel's only in it for the money from my peers, but I sometimes do trials and cases where I think someone needs some help and they don't necessarily have the money to afford my ordinary fee.
Well, I think it's that case of you build it and they come, right? If you have the skills and you're helping people, making money is a byproduct of that, and how in demand you are has a direct correlation to how much you're worth. And I'll use this as an example. When I first started in the music business, I was doing recording in a home studio, and nobody wanted my time because I sucked. I was horrible at it, and I just wanted to practice. So I begged people to come through the studio, and I worked for free for years. Until eventually 2 people wanted my time at the same time. And I said, well, who's got some money? You got $20? I'll put you in instead of them. And that happened over and over and over again until I eventually worked myself up to $150 an hour. And that doesn't happen overnight. It's not like just one day I was successful. It happened because of that pursuit of becoming valuable and developing those skills and a need to be needed. And I think that's everybody has that deep down inside, but sometimes there's a barrier between them and the pursuit of that, actually doing something. And I don't know what it is. I could attribute it to, being judged or, some type of childhood trauma somewhere along the lines. But I mean, for you, it seems like it came very easily.
Not really, not really. I was an unconfident kid. I was a little guy. I'm not a big guy now, but I was really, really, I was a late bloomer growing wise. Wasn't a particularly good athlete, but I did it all. I tried everything. Um, and then I became a lawyer and I became good at it. Right. And, you become good at what you like and you like what you're good at. I don't know what came first in there, but I became good at it. I mean, you develop a lot of confidence. And, again, it comes back to not thinking too much about it. Right. When I go to conferences and I do stuff like this, I start thinking about things probably a little bit too much and why you do it. Probably not a good idea, but it just it no, it didn't it nothing came. My marks never came easy. My work still doesn't come easy. I type with one finger. I still type with one finger.
What I mean by that, and I just want to clarify, just for the sake of making sure that we're both on the same page with this one. That ability to not judge yourself, to not think too much. For you, that was kind of a part of you, where for other people, they can't help it. Like, you strike me as the kind of guy that will jump off a cliff and build your parachute on the way down and do it successfully. Because, I mean, here you are, after going through all of those, we'll call them trials and tribulations, to become a successful lawyer. But what is it? I just would really like to get your take on that. Like, how did you, is that a skill that you developed that, I mean, pardon the whole pun here, but the not give a fuckness about that whole idea of you just doing it anyway? Was that something that you had to work for, or how did that come about?
Yeah, that's interesting. First of all, I'm not the guy who jumps off a cliff and figures it out. I don't jump off the cliff. I don't even go near the cliff.
Oh,
so I don't
fair enough.
I don't take risks that are unnecessary, but I will take risks. And I've taken a lot of risks. And you can, and that's what, I guess, there's your question asked. Before I take that risk, do I start thinking it over and over and over again? No, I say, no, I just don't have the time and energy. So I just plunge in, right? When I opened up my business, I went to the bank and I said, I'm opening up an office. I need a line of credit. I got a $10,000 line of credit. And I remember them saying, well, what do you have? I go, well, I'm a lawyer. And they go, well, how many clients do you have? I said, I got 4 or 5. And I said, don't judge me by what I have, judge me but what my projections will be. And, I knew buddies of mine who wrote projections and business plans. I didn't write business plans. I started writing a business plan. So I just did it. I just went there. But I don't take unnecessary risks, right? And even in practicing law, you got to take risks, right? I had to do my first murder case. If you don't, at some point, you got to get out of your comfort zone. You got to get out of your comfort level. But no, it's not. It's not so much a matter of not giving a fuck. It's more of you gotta take chances. If you don't, right? If I didn't take a chance and do my first murder case when I probably wasn't ready, I'd still be doing shopliftings now, right? And not have nearly the practice I had. So unfortunately, you have to go outside your comfort level. And the difference between, a musician going outside of his comfort level is the song flops, right? Or the guitar solo doesn't work. The difference when I go out of my comfort level is some client may be found guilty, do a lot of jail time, or it's a lot more at stake. And that's why I don't believe I know my job is as hard as it gets. And it's not a matter of skill. I'm not talking about skill-wise. Almost anybody can do my job. Hard to do my job really well, but it's not skill. I'm not saying that there's as much skill needed in becoming a rocket scientist or anything else. No, I'm talking about the stress and the hard work and dealing with all the extraneous pressures makes it difficult. So if I give a fuck too much if I wake up every day and think about reasons why I should not be going into the office, you get crippled with fear, right? We were talking here at the beginning of the show, everything that we're told about to fear not to do, why it won't work. You can't, you gotta just ignore that. You can't focus on that. You got to focus on why it will work.
You made a comment earlier that, let's just call it, lack of a better term, your success came from hard work, but it also came with a little bit of luck. I've gone with this train of thought and a belief that anyone that has had success because somebody at some point took a chance on it. And you need that maybe one, not this big break like on TV, but that you just need a break once in a while, and it lets you kind of advance. What does that mean when you say a little bit of luck got me where I was? What was that luck? What was that one opportunity that someone gave you so that you could advance?
Well, I'll tell you, when I started off, I got a call. I was doing all my cases, and I got a call from a biker who was very well connected at the jail. And he called me, and I had heard of him. It was like probably about 9 months into my practice. And he said, Bruce, I want you to do my parole hearing. And I said, all right. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to win it. And I'm going to lose it. And, it's not going to help my reputation. But I did it. And I lost it. And he thanked me afterwards. And he said, you know what? I'm going to start sending you a lot of clients. I said, what? Like, I lost your case. He goes, I don't care if you lost. He goes, you really busted your ass. And he goes, that's all I care about. He goes, you worked hard for it. You were never going to get it, but you worked hard. And I know you're going to work hard. And I had a relationship with this guy for about 5-6 years before he died. And he literally built I had a jailhouse practice when I started. He built my practice. People would come in, they go, who's your lawyer? And they would say, whoever. He goes, no, it's no longer. It's Bruce Engel now. You call him. So is that luck? Is that hard work? Is that a combination of everything? That's how I got on the map when I started. And I lost my first case. Or I lost his case. I did lose my first case, actually. I lost it. But I lost his case. So one of the greatest things that made me successful came as a result of a loss, a defeat. But it was hard work that proved my mettle.
Yeah, that's incredible. There's a whole myriad of training programs for business development, and one of the things that is common in all of them is that as soon as you get a client, you really have to impress them, and then once you've impressed them enough, they're going to become an advocate, and they're going to push that business forward. And not necessarily just in the sense of word of mouth, but just somebody to vouch for you and give you that lended credibility to say that this guy's the guy. And I know that's probably not what was top of mind or the way that you thought about the work that you were doing there. You just did the best that you absolutely could in that situation, regardless of what you knew the outcome and he knew the outcome to be. You just charged forward into it, busted your ass off, and still at the end of the day we're able to capture the attention and that whatever it is, that whimsical thing of his heart. And he was like, he's a guy, everybody needs to go to this guy, even though he didn't win. And so it's not about the winning so much as it is about, or at least this is what I'm kind of getting from this, is so much as it is about the way that you serve somebody with everything that you got. Is that, would you say the same thing?
That's what happened. That's exactly what happened, right? He goes, I didn't care. He goes, I just wanted you to, I saw you worked hard. You busted, quote unquote. I mean, this guy was a biker. He said, you busted your ass. And that's what I want. And, so that was, you're talking about one little stroke of luck. Yeah. I mean, there's been lots of strokes of luck through the career. You get the right judge, right time. But you got to be lucky to be good and good to be lucky. It works both ways. But if you ask that one moment, yeah, that was that. I remember that like it was yesterday. And that was like in 92, 93. And so that's what got me going. That's what put me on the map as a criminal defense lawyer. I got my first murder case because of him. I got very busy at the jail because of him. I represented his wife, and his wife, at one point, I had all the girls on the range. His wife was in jail, and there are about 30 or 40 girls, and I had, I think, 25 of them were my clients. It was crazy.
Wow.
It was
So
crazy.
I want to hit one more thing before I kind of wrap my part up. You also made the comment and a very valid point about how many people want you to fail. Pretty much everyone except you. And how do you deal with that? Because on previous episodes, we've talked about pro sports and how goalies deal with the pressure of people wanting you to fail. Because basically a team, even your own team, can assist you in failing, but all the pressure is put on you. How do you deal with that when you go into, whether it's a court or a client case or whatever it is, and you have that pressure, you know that everyone wants you to fail? What helps you to move forward regardless of the results, just your effort?
Yeah, great question. And I probably have to think about that long and hard, and probably better put to a lawyer who's been out like 2 or 3 years, because I'm doing this 30 years. I'm used to it already. So I'm past that, right? I know that's just part of it. I'm wired that way, and I deal with it. The same type of thing as, difficult clients who come in. I have my junior associates. The client comes in, they go, Bruce, I don't think we should represent this person. I go, why? They go, well, they're very difficult. They're personality disorder and unreasonable. I go, well, that's why they're doing what they're accused of. Normal people don't do half the shit that the clients come in, right? We don't represent normal people. Normal people do get in trouble. When you get those people, it's a pleasure. But for the most part, the people who commit crimes have got personality disorders. They've got a lot of psychiatric or psychological issues. And to say, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with people who want you to fail? Young lawyers say, I don't deal with it. I get rid of them. But that's not, no, I say you got to deal with it. Just, that's what we do. Put your head down and figure it out. And my associates make fun of me because I always say, just do what you got to do, figure it out. And, that's the way you go. I mean, I'm past that, right? That's what we do, right? I mean, I've represented some very scary people, some very difficult people, and those make for the great stories. Not pleasant when it happens, not pleasant as it happens, and to go through it. But
you're going to have a biography when you die, right? Like that's
right. Those make the great stories. Does the normal medical doctor who got into a fight with his wife and will get the matter resolved and is a pleasure to deal with and pays you, does that make for a good story? No, it's kind of boring, right? It's that's just very, very ordinary. But those are a pleasure to deal with. Those are easy. It's the difficult bikers or mobsters or psychiatric patients who are unpredictable, who make things very, very difficult and very unpleasant to go through. That makes the best reading. Those make the best cocktail stories. That's what guys like you want to talk about and hear about. But how do I deal with people? How do I deal with the fact that everybody in the courtroom wants me to fail? I always go, fuck you. I'm going to do whatever it takes to not fail. And I'm going to outwork all you guys, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. The judge who wants to be difficult to me, who wants me to provide copies because he's a little bit lazy to get his own copies, I'll give you your copies, Your Honor. I'm going to do what it takes because that's what I got to do. And if it makes life a bit easier for you and it's going to help me win, I'll do what you got to do. Crown attorney who's difficult, who gives me a hard time, I'll go, fuck you, but I'm going to do what you got to do. I'm going to do what you want. I'm going to help you make the right decision to help me. It's part of it. That's what I do. If I don't want to do this anymore, and I tell my junior associates, you don't want to do this crap, don't do it. Go sell real estate. Go and open up a coffee shop. For me, my goal, I always make fun about owning a coffee shop, right? That's the greatest thing in the world. You own a Starbucks and a client complains, what's the problem? Well, you gave me a latte when I wanted a grande. And I always say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to fix your problem right now. I'm going to give you the coffee you wanted. And I'm going to give you a gift card for $10. Does that solve the problem? Yeah. That problem is solved. You got a client for life. I can't do that in my business.
Oh,
So
I love it.
when a Starbucks owner complains about how stressful their life is, that'll piss me off.
there's this, I mean, in a day and age of, trigger warnings on content that is just talking about a touchy subject as if it's going to be violent or create some permanent scar on somebody, which, I mean, seeing somebody die or something on camera is probably not the best thing for you. But in a day and age where everybody's doing so much to protect each other from some kind of, something hard, for the advice to be that's good, and to lean into that and to suck it up and do the hard work and push through it because nobody else is going to do it. And that's why you're going to be successful when nobody else will do that. If that's the differentiator between you and your success, is to actually lean into the hard stuff, then that's the moral of the story, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's no other, I mean, that's the way it is, right? If I don't want to do this, I don't have to do this. No one's twisting my arm. And if I don't like it and I don't want to do it, like, I don't try to come off as a crybaby, right? But I really do believe I have the hardest job on the planet. But I don't have to do it. I don't have to do it. I'm not in a situation where if I don't want to, I can do something else, and don't whine. I can't whine and complain. And I don't mean to come off as a whiner and a complainer, but I'm saying it because here we are and you're asking me that question.
Right.
And if you want my honest answer, you know what? I got a harder job than the guy who's got to put out oil fires in the middle of a refinery in Texas when it's 900 degrees outside. I still think my job is harder than that guy's job.
I think that's perspective and that's definition, right? Is it physically harder? Like, do you come home with your muscles sore? But mentally, it's a mentally exhausting, it's a mentally draining career. And I think the same for a doctor. Like, does he come home and have scars on his arm because barbed wire cut him up? No. But is a mental exhaustion a thing? 100% it is. So I do think that, yeah, stress and hard work, they come in different forms. So yeah, I think you could say that you have the hardest job.
Yeah, well, I think there's an analogy that I'd love to use in this exact example. Astronauts, when they go up into space, after being up there, even for just 30 days, when they come back to Earth, their bone density has gone down. Their muscle strength has gone down. All the things that their body had before they left is reduced. And the reason that is because our bodies actually need gravity, pressure, stress in order to maintain that bone density, that muscle mass, and the strength and all the other things that you need. So you actually need some level of stress and pressure in your life in order to exist. Otherwise, you just turn to mush, right?
I don't know what I'd be without the level of stress. People always say you thrive on it, but let me just say one thing. It's not all, thorns and bullets and horrible experience. There's lots of good times about it. There's lots of funny stuff that happens. There's lots of rushes and highs when you win a case and you come out, you feel great, and you get those easy clients and you make good money and you don't work too hard and bust your ass and risk too much. There's lots of good times as well. It's not all. So I don't want some young law student thinking, holy shit, this is like the worst job. It's not the worst job. It's not. There's worse jobs out there, but if it's not easy. It's not a walk in the park, and it's not like you see on LA Law or Law and Order. It's not that simple, and it doesn't, and you're not flying around in private jets and wearing most expensive clothes and working in an office that looks like a palace. You can if you want to. You got to pay for it, but it's not all gloom and doom or as bleak as we're talking about. There's lots of good times and good sides to it, but it is hard work. And it's, as you know, anything worthwhile, you got to work hard for, right? You don't just get it.
Yeah. I can appreciate that. Well, we've kind of reached the end of the program, Bruce, and I just want to thank you. I know you've been very generous with your time, and so we're both very grateful, and I'm sure the listeners are also very grateful. On a parting note, for anybody, and I know that we kind of touched on, a little bit of all of these different areas of, what it takes to do the work that you do. For anybody listening that is considering something like what you do, or even pursuing something entrepreneurial in any way, what kind of parting advice can you leave with them? What's one thing that you'd love for them to know so that when they kind of get into this, or they are, maybe they're in it and they need a little bit of help to kind of keep going, what would that be for you?
Well, this is what I tell my students. I've got a young law student who wants to be a lawyer, criminal lawyer, more than anything else. And I have 3 kids, and none of them are lawyers. I never encourage them to be that. One was a very good athlete. Has become he's an advertiser. Another one's in sales. My middle daughter is may go to law school. She was studying, and she got into an accident, so she's had some challenges. But I've never encouraged any of them to do that. But if someone's coming to me and they want advice and they want to do it, I say, do it. I go, you have to have fun. If you're not having fun, don't do it. At the end of a work day, I always say to my staff, I go, you having fun? And they go, yeah. I go, good. Because if you're not having fun, stop. Not worth doing. And you gotta minimally like what you do, right? The big difference, you've spoken to me for an hour, right? You get a sense that I kind of like what I do.
Yeah.
Right. I think you got that sense. I have lots of doctor friends. I'm friends with more doctors and lawyers, and these guys hate what they do. They hate going in. They hate their job. They hate work. They hate Monday mornings. Sunday nights, they're depressed. I haven't been depressed on Sunday nights since I was in school. Sunday night, you know what I'm thinking? I go, what does the week have in store for me? What's going to be? I look forward to Monday. Get back at it. I'm usually working a lot during the weekend anyways, but if you don't like what you're going to do, you're not going to be good at it. So you got to like what you do. And if you like what you do, you're going to be good at it. And if you're good at what you do, you're going to end up liking what you do. So catch-22 thing, or maybe opposite of a catch-22. But you got to do what you like. And if you don't like it, don't do it. I was into sciences. I didn't like it. My dad says, what are you doing? Get out of it. And that's why it was the best thing that I ever happened to me, is that I failed for a lot of other reasons, right? Although you never know. Maybe if I would have been a doctor, I would have had no stress and been a dentist and have an easy time in the chair and not have to have all this crap that I've gone through the last 30 years. You never know, right? But
you'd probably be like the rest of those guys that are your friends and absolutely hate your job.
Yeah, but you know what? It's like that music thing, right? We only have one take at this, right? There's people change careers, but really you only have one take. You got to get it. We have one life. You got to get it right. So you got to do stuff you like. That's the advice I give. If you don't like it, and you don't have to love it. I'm not saying love it, but you got to really like it. And if you're just doing it for the sake of it, don't do it. And when I interview people for jobs, they always say, why are you hiring this person? What's important to me is I want someone who wants a career, not just a job. You know the difference, right? Some guy just applying for a job. I got to work, and I remember when I was working at the radio station, I went out. I interviewed a band out of Montreal, and they were trying to they sounded like a lot like men without hats, or men with hats. Remember that Men Without Hats?
Yeah.
And I interviewed this guy, and he was a keyboard player. I remember saying to him, I go, do you like playing live? Do you enjoy it? And he was a musician. And he said, you know what? He goes, it's music. It's my job. It's work. And I don't like working. And I've never heard from this guy again. I remember thinking, what a bad attitude that is.
Yeah.
What a bad attitude. And he was a bum, right? He was a bum. He didn't, to be starting off and not like what you're doing, then find something else.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
I had a similar situation with somebody, actually. He said, I was working with him recording in the studio, and he goes, I don't want to be a 35-year-old rapper. I said, well, what are you doing it for then? If you didn't want to pursue this as a career, as a job, like Snoop Dogg's 68 and he's still recording records, like what are you in it for? And what I think he meant to say was, I don't want to be unsuccessful and still doing this by the time I hit 35, but I'm too embarrassed to give up or quit or walk away right now because I'm so invested in it.
Or maybe he's using it as a stepping stone to become a producer, right? Or, that's honorable. That's nothing wrong with that.
I mean, chase another career pursuit.
Well, I know a lot of lawyers who don't want to be lawyers, they want to become judges, and you got to be a lawyer first to become a judge. I have no interest in being a judge. Don't want to be a law professor. I always wanted to do criminal defense. I've done it. I've been very successful. I've been very lucky, and it's been hard work, and it hasn't been the easiest trail in the world, but I've done it, and it worked out. And I really can't complain.
Well, I appreciate your time today, Bruce. It's been an absolute pleasure just hearing some of the stories and getting some of the insights from you. If and I don't know if there's a lot of criminals that listen to our podcast, but if there are, how would one go about finding you?
Oh, you can find me. You Google Bruce Engel, you'll find. I love when people say, I can't get a hold of you. You can get a hold of me. You got my cell phone available. You got my office phone. You got my website. When people say, I couldn't get a hold of you, I go, bullshit. You can get a hold of me. I am very accessible. I'm not like some royal figure that you can't reach. You can reach me. You can find me. You can Google my name, Bruce Engel, and you find the website and you get a hold of me very easily.
Yeah. It was easy for us to find you. So
there you go.
You mentioned that you have a podcast, or you were starting a podcast. Is that still going on?
Yeah, we recorded our first episode.
Okay.
Its working title is Two Lost Souls. Me and another guy who's very, very, very funny. And I don't know, like I told him I want to do punk rock, and he's got a whole recording studio and he's overdubbing stuff and fixing it up. I go, what are you doing? Let's just get this thing going. So we've only done the first episode about a month ago, and I'm probably going to text them and say, what's happening with episode number 2? And so, yeah, well, that was a working title. I had another good, smart title for it, but and it's just really about nothing. It's just about our observations in life and very topical stuff, not really focused. Maybe we should have a focus on it, but we just recorded one episode. We'll see where that goes.
Cool. Well, we'll try our best to kind of locate it and make sure that it's in the show notes for this episode as well, in case anybody wants to check that out. If you want to get a hold of me or Mitch, go to theperspectivepodcast.ca, check out what we do and how we can help you. But until next time, that's the end of this episode, and we will see you in the next one.